He looks up at me with a big Stanley smile and just goes, "Oh, great, more competition."
George Sirois was a fascinating guest to have on the Perty Nerdy Talk Show. We discussed everything from sci-fi wrestling, you heard me, to voice acting. His story is nothing if not inspirational. Call it destiny or fate. You wouldn't believe his journey unless you heard it here.
I George Lucas the hell out of it. Okay, there's some Jesus Christ. There's some King Arthur. There's some Optimus Prime. Yeah, let's go ahead and put him in. Take a look at all of the Marvel movies that were not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm going to go from Howard the Duck to Dark Phoenix. I'm going to go from Duck till Dark. And he goes, "That's your title." Damn, it'd be really cool to have a good sword fight scene up here. How the hell are they going to get past security? We're in a post 9/11 world. I know Kung Fu moment from The Matrix. It's like, whoa. It's kind of like the great line from Kermit the Frog at the end of Muppets Take Manhattan. It's like, you guys aren't just going to watch the show. You're going to be in the show. You know.
Hang on to your seats. It's a wild ride. Hey everyone, welcome to the Perty Nerdy Talk Show. Today I have with us George Sirois, who has quite a lot under his belt. I am super excited to talk to him about it. George, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got into what you're doing. A lot, right?
Well, that's quite the epic introduction right there.
Let's start with just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a real pleasure to be able to be a guest on another podcaster's show. I'm really excited about that. Yes, my name is George Sirois. I am an author of the novel Excelsior, a science fiction young adult story, as well as its sequel, Ever Upward, Part 2 in the Excelsior journey. I have Part 3, Greater Glory, that's currently in development, and they are part of a 3-book deal that I currently have with Ronan Weatherford, so I'm very excited about that. I also have a completed 5-part science fiction wrestling serial called From Parts Unknown that I am in the midst of kind of reevaluating to see how I want to run with that and see if maybe there's something else that I can do to kind of add a little extra oomph to it to really get it out there and hopefully let it find its audience. In the meantime, I'm also a podcaster. I just finished my third of 3 interviews that I'm doing for my weekly interview show called Excelsior Journeys. And it is a weekly interview show that puts a spotlight on different creative people and lets them share their personal journey to success. And I've had up and coming creatives, I've had established creatives, I've had people that have inspired me, I've had people that I hope will inspire others. And it covers the wide range of creatives. So I have filmmakers, I have authors, I have screenwriters, I have stand-up comics, I have a lot of voice actors. Yeah, it's been a wonderful ride with this, and also had fellow podcasters on, and it's been just a real joy. I've passed 200 episodes already. I'm up to the 7th season, and I've co-founded the Once Upon a Podcast Network with 2 other podcasters. We have 9 shows now that are out there that wear the Once Upon a Podcast Network banner, and the 9th show, actually called Audio Drama Sunday Theater, just went live today as we're recording this, which is September 3rd. So
my goodness.
I'm very, very ecstatic about that. And then also voice actor and an audiobook narrator with over 15 titles to my name. So
it's
been busy.
Okay, so yeah, I saw on your bio that you were a voice actor, but you're also did you say an audiobook narrator?
That is where the bulk of my voice acting really comes in handy.
Wow.
Although one of the things that I'm really proud of is directing and adapting my book Excelsior into an audio drama on its own.
Yes.
And that's actually out now thanks to the Audio Drama Sunday Theater podcast. So people can go ahead and download that and listen to it and hopefully enjoy it, because I sure did.
Yeah, so. Fantastic. Oh my gosh. If you see me looking down, it's because I take notes so that I try not to interrupt, but there's a whole lot there that I want to dig into. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So part 3, you said Greater Glory of your Excelsior. Is that the name of the series? Is Excelsior is the series, or Excelsior is the first book?
Excelsior is the first book. And then when I was figuring out what I wanted to call part 2, it was around the same time that the Twilight movies were out. So you had, instead of it just being called New Moon on the big screen, it was called the Twilight Saga New Moon. And so that was their way of just kind of stamping it as saying
Branding
that, you know,
it.
this is part of, exactly, branding
Yeah.
it. So, so that had me thinking, like, how exactly, what's a good way to really kind of, kind of run with this? And and I started throwing around some different possible names to my readers. And one of the titles was called The Excelsior Journey. And then and then when people were responding to that, it was just like, okay, so it'll be called Ever Upward, Part 2 in the Excelsior Journey. And then Greater Glory will be Part 3. That way, everything is nicely branded from the start. That way, we're not confusing anyone.
Yeah.
And that led to what would eventually be the name of the podcast that I do, because I knew in 2018, after working on another podcast for 2 years with some friends as part of like this big roundtable discussion of different writers that are here in the St. Louis area, we all had a great time doing that show. And I started to get really kind of anxious to kind of start my own. I was having a blast doing the one that I was doing.
Right.
And that lasted as long as it did. But in the meantime, I was really excited about the possibility of starting my own. And then it was just like, okay, so I'm going to interview a lot of creative people. I have a lot of creative people that are in my circle of friends. So why they're my guests. Like I can line each one up and I'll have hundreds of episodes worth of material. And that's what it's wound up being so far. So with the exception of some very special episodes that I can mention later on.
Yeah.
But I was not sure about what I was going to call it. And I was talking with a friend of mine named David Allen Lucas, who's also a writer and also a podcaster. And he was the producer of the show that we were doing, the big roundtable show. And he was hosting, as part of the St. Louis Writers Guild, he was hosting a big convention. And so I was there selling books, and I had my banner up that had the cover art for the first Excelsior book, as it was when I was with that publisher. And he looked over my shoulder and he saw how it was printed on the book, and it said Excelsior Part 1 in the Excelsior Journey. So he points to that and just goes, why not call it the Excelsior Journey? And I turned around and I was like, I like that. But let's tweak it a little bit. Let's call it Excelsior Journeys, since everyone has their own.
Yeah.
And so now it just kind of became that. And I reached out to the same cover artist who worked on the cover art for those Excelsior books, and who was also kind of a genius. And I said, this is what I have in mind. I want to kind of keep that branding going. So can you do something like this? And she, as soon as I told her, she turned it around in like about a half hour, and it was this artwork right here.
Wow. I don't think we can see that very well. Is it something that's on your wall?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in fact,
maybe we can get a screenshot of it later. I can share.
Yeah, actually,
there we go.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a glare from the light, but yeah.
Wow.
But there we are.
Okay.
Yeah. So so I saw that and I was just like, yeah, that's it. And I paid her what I needed to pay her, and that was it. I owned it. So.
Man, that is fantastic. So tell us, can you first of all, is Excelsior is that the first book you've published?
Not quite, because my writing career is kind of like on a currently on a treadmill right now.
Okay.
Because like a lot of different running and everything, but you feel like you're in the same place. And because in 2002, I had finished up an adaptation of one of my screenplays that I had written when I was younger, and it was an idea that I had for originally for a video game. It was a video game concept that I had that was wrestling based, and it would eventually be what is now From Parts Unknown.
Right.
So I had that video game idea, and then I was like, let's see how it looks as a treatment. So I wrote that. Let's see how it looks as a script, and then I wrote about 10 drafts of that.
Wow.
And even submitted one into a film festival in New York City, and they gave it a little award that they felt like they just wanted to like give me something for it.
Yeah.
So they gave me an award called Best Futuristic Drama. It's like, I know I was, there wasn't anybody else with that,
Right.
It wasn't like I had competition on that one. So I took it, and I was like, hey, you want to give me an award? I'm fine with it. So, and then in 2001, that's when I decided I was going to write the novelization of it. And so I wrote that, and then spent about a year on it, and wound up self-publishing it through iUniverse. and this is 2002. So in terms of self-publishing, it was a dark time for the rebellion. Like it was really
back in 2001, I'm sure.
it was pathetic at that time. Like the only real course you had for self-publishing was buying like $1,000 package from Ex Libris and getting phone calls every single day from their salespeople. It was terrible. Wow. And it just made you feel like it really was a last-ditch effort to get your work out there. Yeah. And that was what they said in I remember the Complete Idiot's Guide to Publishing Science Fiction. They have just a 1-paragraph thing about self-publishing and saying, don't do it. It's a last-ditch effort. You'll wreck your career. And then sure enough, several years later, what do they have out? The Complete Idiot's Guide to Self-Publishing. Right. So it's amazing how things kind of
It's
catch
very
up.
comparative, I think, to the film industry, where if you went to TV, like everybody thought your career was dead, and now everybody's doing TV.
And now
shows.
Harrison Ford's on TV.
Yeah, is that weird?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so you started out self-publishing, and it sounds like you are traditionally published now. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey from self-published to traditional?
Yes, I can, because in 2008, that's when I decided I was going to write the story of Excelsior. This was a character that I created back in 1992, and he was someone that I had been just kind of picking at for, at that time, 16 years. Wow. And that's when I picked up the book No Plot, No Problem by Chris Beatty, and that was my introduction to National Novel Writing Month. So when I heard about that got me really excited, because I was just like, ooh, this is a good like structured way to take on like a draft of a novel. Like this is great, because that's the one thing I'm like always craving is some form of structure. And I remember reading that book, like the first section, it just talked about the history of the book, and goes, and after about 15 pages or so, that's when it says, okay, let's start writing day one. And I closed the book because it was December of 07, and National Novel Writing Month is November.
It's in November, yeah.
Right. So I missed my window for that. And I was like, whatever the case, I cannot do this in November. It's Thanksgiving, it's my anniversary, it's my wife's birthday. Not happening. Yeah. And then, sure enough, 10 years later, I would add my daughter's birthday. So there's that. So
yeah, November's just a busy month.
November's a busy month, yes. So that was where it was. So I just knew, like, okay, I need to focus on a different month to do the actual writing. How about June? June's got 30 days. I'll pick June. And so I just followed the structure of National Novel Writing Month and its different milestones and just did it all in June. And somehow I was able to keep up with everything. And on day 30 at 11:35 p.m., I wrote the end on there. I had already passed the 50,000 word mark, but I still needed like another 5,000 words or something to finish it. Yeah. But I finished it. And I was so confident that it was just going to be me just kind of giving it a little touch-ups, and then I will send it out to agents, because this is a more universally accepted kind of story. It's something that, people will really, gravitate to. And I sent it over to a friend of mine who I knew as a writer and editor from where I used to work. And she read the first chapter and just goes, all right, this is going to take a lot of work.
Oh, like, gosh. Oh. Wow, what a way to hit your ego. You remember the ice bucket challenge? Yes.
That was going around? Yes. Picture that, to my ego.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what that was. And so I wound up doing that and worked for almost 2 years, revising it. And I'm glad I did, because it really did need a whole lot of work. Yeah. But I got it to a place where I felt like I was happy with eventually. Yeah. And then what I did was I decided initially I was going to try to get an agent, but I also felt like if I get this out there traditionally published and it bombs, then I'm not going to be able to finish up what I need to do. And this is just the starting point of a whole lot of different stories in my head. Right. So I need to protect this. I need to protect the characters. I know I said I wasn't going to do this again, but to hell with it. Let's go ahead and self-publish. But what I did this time was I set it up as an early bird package to all of my friends, all of my contacts on social media. And I said, by putting up $17.95, you're securing your own autographed book to be either handed to you by me or mailed to you via mail if you're out of the state. But you're also adding your name to the acknowledgement section in the back of the book.
Oh, that's a great way to think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wound up racking in more than enough money to take care of all the setup charges, all the printing, and all the mailing of everything. So they always say with self-publishing that, oh, you had to pay to get your work out. And it's like, no, my readers paid, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
So by that reckoning, I declared the first printing pretty much a success. Then
you went into your first printing, like you said, and you weren't in the hole, which is great. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And then in 2011, late 2011, I took part in a little group that was kind of critiquing different first chapters, and the person who was doing the critiquing took a sledgehammer to that first chapter of Excelsior, and there was still a lot more work to be done that I just didn't even realize. It was a matter of having another pair of eyes to look at it. So I went in and did more changes and then re-uploaded the ebook version. And so basically making the first printing null and void. So in 2000,
but now it's like a rare copy and it's signed.
Now it's a rare copy, exactly. I'll go ahead and note that as a rare copy. I'm fine with that. But in 2013, by this point, I had moved with my wife from New York to St. Louis, and so which is where we are now. And we set up. I just happened to find that there was a small press based out of St. Louis that was looking for submissions. And so I sent her Excelsior, and she said, "You seem to be doing pretty well with the self-publishing. From what I see here on the rankings, you sure you're okay with doing this?" And I said, yeah, I felt like I kind of hit the ceiling in terms of how far I can go. So if I have a team behind me, then I'll feel like I can kind of push out a little bit more. And sure enough, she said that, it wasn't a matter of if I was going to take the story, but when. And so that was a good feeling. She sent me the contract in March of 2013, and it wasn't going to be launched until November. So that's when I kind of looked back at her and said, do you mind if I touch it up a little bit more on this? I had started writing the sequel, and I realized that there were certain things that my characters could do they couldn't do the first time around.
Right.
So when she said, sure, it's just going to be a second printing anyway, then I went the George Lucas route. I George Lucas the hell out of it. And I just said like, all right, so now they can do this. So that's one thing that they can do. They can communicate telepathically. So I got that. And then it was, and then I reached out to my editor and I said that we had been talking about ever since the character's conception in 1992, I was always talking about his sword being equivalent to Excalibur. I was like, what if it really is Excalibur? And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, we know where it is in King Arthur's time, but we don't know where it came from and we haven't seen it since. She's like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. So it became Excalibur. And so for the second printing, I got to not only make some additional adjustments, like I went in and did like a full-on Pureflix check as well, just removed any sign of any profanity in there because there were like younger kids that seemed to be interested in this story.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, then I'll keep the comic book style action.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not replacing. I'm not replacing rifles with walkie-talkies or anything, but I can at least go in and and clean up the potty mouths.
Right.
So I was glad I did that, and because like now it just reads a lot better.
Yeah.
And so it wound up being picked up in. So it wound up coming back out in 2013, and it did well. It did well during that second run, and I was really happy in 2016 when I right after I had taken some voice lessons, right after I'd lost my full-time job and raised money to go ahead and get the voice lessons taken so I can pursue voiceover work.
Yeah.
And that was when I reached out to her and I said, do you mind if I try reading a chapter as an audiobook? Just see how it sounds. And she's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I read the first chapter and I sent it over to her and just like, go, you got it, go.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that started me on the foray toward audiobook narrating. So
you're
what better
even
way
the
to do it than with your own?
For your own book. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what Excelsior is about that we can hear about without spoiling anything, and maybe dig into a little bit of the world building, how you got inspired for it.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, Excelsior is the story of a young man named Matthew Peters. He's a 17-year-old underachiever. He's finishing up high school, and for the last 7 years, he's been writing and drawing a webcomic about a character named Excelsior, who's a savior of a faraway planet called DNAB 4. And he gets visited by a woman who says that she is not only from that planet, but also everything he's been writing and drawing are Excelsior's memories, and Matthew is next in line to become him. And he has to do it fast because Excelsior's enemies are growing in power on both planets. So it becomes like a race to basically just kind of see like, okay, we have this kid who's clearly not in proper shape and everything to become Excelsior. But at the same time, like the more work that not only this older woman is doing, but also the work of 4 other Denarians who wind up joining this quest to kind of revitalize Excelsior on Earth. Excelsior's life force is becoming more and more awakened through him, and it's becoming very stressful to Matthew because he's worried that he's now becoming just a puppet for this otherworldly force. And it's very much like he's dealing with a whole lot of issues that are going on, like about that. His uncle is trying to be as supportive as he can, but he's also a recovering alcoholic and who has let him down quite a few times in the past, including a big part of what happens in the story. And so he's dealing with quite a bit with this, but at the same time, those other forces are, like I said, one of them is one of the top levels of what is called the Crunation Empire, which is currently controlling all of DNAB 4, and he is being revitalized on Earth, while the Emperor is just returning to power on that planet. So there's a whole lot that's going on in terms of all the different things that are coming after Matthew.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's set in modern day, right? Because you said he's a webcomic.
Set in modern day, yep.
Okay. Yep. And so, tell us a little bit. Can you tell me if there was a singular inspiration point? Like, what was the very infancy of the idea of this story? Where did that start at?
It started really when I was in 4th grade. When I was in 4th grade, my friends and I would pass the time in between assignments by writing and drawing these different characters. And they were inspired by the things of the day. So this is the mid 80s. So everything that the FCC was nice enough to allow on television, that was my daily diet. So I had Masters of the Universe, I had G.I. Joe, I had Transformers, I had Voltron, I had all this, great stuff. And obviously Star Wars, growing up on that. I was part of the Star Wars generation. So there was a whole lot that was happening that I was just absorbing and wanting to kind of twist and turn and manipulate into something of my own.
Yeah, your own version. Yeah.
Exactly. So after I left that school and I wound up moving down from New York to Richmond, Virginia, I brought those characters with me, and I just kept on chipping at them and adding more detail and adding a little bit more of a background to them and really having fun with it. And I even would go ahead and during my 10th grade year, I remember just like taking this one group of characters, and instead of just creating comic strips with them, I started writing prose with them because I could barely draw them anyway. So why not just write about them? And so I would do that. And then to make it fun for my fellow students to see and read and enjoy, I put them in as like supporting characters. So
that's great.
Yeah, just like a little bit there. So now all of a sudden they wanted to keep reading, so they would find out what happened to them. Yeah. And it became something really fun. And so, but in 1992, after my sophomore year, and I was actually had to be in summer school because my 3 out of 4 years of my 6 years in Richmond, Virginia, I was in summer school, and my grades just tanked. They bottomed out, and it took a while for me to really kind of get my confidence back. Yeah. And so, but my rock bottom was having to take summer school for English, my 10th grade year. I just didn't jive well with my teacher. Yeah. But it wound up being a blessing in disguise because the teacher that I had in summer school was fantastic. And she was just, you wanted to do your best to try to impress her, make sure you wouldn't disappoint her. Right. And during that time, we were talking about King Arthur, and she brought in the PG version of the 1981 John Boorman movie Excalibur. Wow! And I had never seen it before. I knew about it, but I had never seen it before. Yeah. So I finally got to watch it, and I was hooked, like right from the beginning. I was so taken by it. I was just like, ooh, I get it. It's just like and I'm a sucker for a good legend anyway. So I was just like, this is amazing. Not only was I really taken by the whole legend of King Arthur and told in this way, but I was just like, I need to create someone new for my universe. I need to, this person needs to be like at the center of everything. It needs to be like the real legend, needs to be a god in human form. And I was taken from, okay, there's some Jesus Christ, there's some King Arthur, there's some Optimus Prime. Yeah, let's go ahead and put him in and just put him in a blender and everything. And then I was like, what am I going to call him?
Yeah.
And the word Excelsior popped in my head because having grown up with Marvel Comics, we had Stan Lee's soapbox.
Yes.
And you always had that, his ending just going Excelsior, and so that word really popped in my head. And also the fact that it's on the New York State flag, it was one of the ships in Star Trek 3, 4, and 6, and all this great stuff. And I was just like, yeah, it's a good word for him. Good word. And then when I found out that it was like this old English term that meant onward and upward to greater glory, I was like, yes, man, definitely.
It's like it just built itself right there.
It did. It really did.
Crazy.
And so I just kept on, chipping away at him and realizing like I had something there with him.
Yeah.
And then after working on him for so long and then coming up and then realizing in 2007 that in 2008 I was going to start writing the novel. I was like, I think that there's a way to kind of spin this and make it a little bit more young adult, because I always had like a young adult kind of style with my writing. But originally the character that becomes Excelsior in human form on Earth is he was a grown man originally, and who was someone who was enjoying some big success in Excelsior as in comic book form, and there was going to be a movie based on that character. So he was ready to like go to that next step of success when all of a sudden this happens, and he realizes like, oh, your fate is not this, it's actually this, it's actually that. So you're no longer going to be, you're not going to see the it's kind of like the great line from Kermit the Frog at the end of Muppets Take Manhattan. It's like, you guys aren't just going to watch the show, you're going to be in the show. So
I love that.
So
is it strange to you? I mean, I love the idea that it seems like it all came about because of that one summer school, that 1 year for summer school for English. Like, if that hadn't happened, do you think you would have been here?
I honestly don't know. I want to say at some point I would have discovered it.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, I just feel like that's a good encouragement for folks who maybe are starting out and think you're not where you want to be. I mean, it could end up all okay. Like, you never know how you're going to get to where you're at. That's wild. Yeah,
but the real inspiration for the character of Matthew Peters came from my cousin, because in March of 2005, my cousin Matthew Peter Henkel passed away, and he was someone who had dealt with kidney issues all his life, and finally got a successful transplant. And things seemed to be like, it's like, okay, he got the transplant, he just got engaged, like everything is, it's like he's done every single thing he's wanted to do in life.
Yeah.
He saying like, I want to be an altar boy. He was an altar boy. I want to be an Eagle Scout. Became a Boy Scout, and he reached Eagle. And only like 2% of Scouts ever reached that.
Yeah. That's an achievement.
He wanted to be a volunteer firefighter in our grandfather's path, and he did that. And then he became an EMT. He helped, with delivering a baby, and helped keep the peace on the Jersey Shore during 9/11. Like, he had done so much, and, got all the support and everything from his family and everything, and was able to do basically anything he ever said that he would do. And then finds the love of his life, and it's just like, talk about complete, like, I mean, and then getting that operation, getting the successful transplant, and then it was something with the medication that he had that in a 1 in a million combination wound up stopping his heart.
Man. man.
Yeah. And so it was just like, and I didn't realize it until after his wake and after the funeral and everything, because they had, his parents invited me, my aunt and uncle invited me to say something, and I knew I was going to anyway.
Yeah.
But the one phrase that I didn't come up with until later on was when I realized, like, oh my God, he lived an abridged life.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a shortened life. Yeah, it was short, like in terms of like passed away right before his 25th birthday and everything. But he did every single thing he wanted to do, and like found the love of his life.
Yeah.
To spend the rest of his life with. It was like, it's all there.
Yeah. That's
only
great
like
way
a
to
fraction.
look at it.
Only a fraction of people ever reach that.
Yeah.
So that was what that was what I said in the afterword for the first book. And I just said, like, it wasn't a shortened life. It was an abridged life. He lived life with all the boring parts taken out.
That's lovely. That's a lovely way to, pay tribute to, and you said that he inspired the main character in your story? Yeah.
Yeah, because I had different ideas of what I was going to name him and everything, but then it just came down to, it's just like, Matthew was always my hero.
Yeah.
Because, and, he always looked up to me because I was the older cousin.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just like, dude, like like for everything you've been doing, everything you've had to deal with, and everything you were, every way that you faced it, it's like, dude, you are my hero. You've always been. So why not immortalize that? Why not make that official and name him the hero in my story? A lot of the stuff that Matthew goes through, a lot of it's my own wiring,
right, from
my own, like insecurities, my own failures, my own, imposter syndrome that, that it's constantly there.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, when he succeeds, that's Matthew.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love that. That is very sweet and heart-wrenching, folks.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna my eyes are already watering. So sounds like your Excelsior series really started with the characters. They were in your head. You built them out, and it seems like that continues on with the sequel, and then you now have a third book coming up. Can we touch on, you mentioned you have a 5-part series that's a sci-fi wrestling. Do I have that correct? Can you talk about that a little bit? I've never heard that, and I wanted to understand how wrestling plays a part in this.
So this really came up in 1995. I was a freshman and in college, and I was back in New York, and I was really just kind of enjoying myself and everything by taking a walk and everything on Saturdays, just putting my head Walkman on and everything, and just taking a stroll like around there. I remember it, and I remember this vividly. I was on Amsterdam Avenue, and I was thinking back to an episode of Wrestling Challenge that was just on that day, because I am been a wrestling fan since grade school. And
so when we say wrestling, I just want to make sure I understand. Are we talking about like WWE type wrestling, or
professional wrestling? So
got it.
So I've been a fan of that for a lot of years, and right now I'm just I'm still kind of like there in terms of kind of outside looking in, just because I haven't watched it regularly in a number of years, but I'm still just kind of keeping tabs on it and making sure, just hoping that everything is going well with it, with the whole industry, because I do care for it. And I was it was a match with The Undertaker, who is my personal favorite and always had been, and there was this one match and everything. He was just facing off just against a regular jobber, like someone who was out there to lose. It was during a time when he was at one of his more menacing times, when he wasn't, in a sense, like playing with his food. He would just come in, he'd choke slam, tombstone, and that would be the end of it. And it was great. And I would just remember, it's like, just kind of keeping an eye on that and everything. It was just like, and just thinking to myself, just imagine like what it would be like if that were his persona outside the ring as well. Like what would it be like if all of these larger than life type of characters, all these larger than life storylines were all happening in real life? Yeah. And what would it be like? What would that world be like? If, say, like, they really did settle their matters in the ring, and it wasn't predetermined who was going to win or lose, and it was basically just like the storyline was either going to go this way or this way. It's up to the guys in the ring to figure it out. Yeah. And so then it became like, well, if that's the case, then there'd be a lot of goings on behind the scenes. It'd be a very volatile type of type of place, and there would be someone really kind of doing whatever he could to gain as much power as possible. And then it had me thinking just like, well, what if somebody was turned into a monster similar to the Undertaker, somebody who would basically be a tool to kind of tear through the ranks of this company, to claim the title for someone else, and just trying to think of like all different scenarios like that. And so that became the premise of what would be the video game, which would have this regular ordinary person turned into a monster of a man, tearing through the ranks of this promotion, taking on the champion, beating the champion, and then just when he's being ordered to deliver the killing blows, he looks out in the stands and he sees his wife, and that triggers the memories of who he was. He turns on his creators, and now all of a sudden he's got to go back down at the bottom and work his way up on the other side as a good guy, and then eventually face the guy that he won the championship for in the winner take all story. So that was what I had in mind, and then I just kept on picking at it over and over again. And there were characters that came in that were for one draft and were completely discarded in another one. And I had I remember there was one that I had this internet writer that was following the action, and then I cut her out completely, and then I had this other one who was like the spirit of a Roman gladiator taking part in it, and that wound up going away. It was just all these different angles that I was doing. And then finally, when it came out in 2002, that version, I wound up writing another draft of it in 2005, and that was with from the advice of one of my friends who said, the government's got to get involved in this. I was like, yeah, they kind of do, don't they? So if this is the last remaining sport in America, they got to be the ones to really subsidize this. So and originally it was just they were the money men, that's all that they were, and just kind of chiming in every now and then to say like, oh, everything's going great, it should go this way, not this way. But that was as much I had for the government reach. Then in 2010, that was when I reached out to iUniverse and I said, what kind of specials do you guys have these days? Because the book right now is just sitting out there, it's just kind of rotting. And they said, well, if you pay this amount, you'll get half off of 25 copies sent over to you, and we'll turn your book into an ebook. I was like, oh, great, okay, let's do that. So I did that. I got my 25 copies, and then I waited for the ebook, and I waited, and I waited, months passing by, no ebook. And I called them up and I said, where are we with this ebook? Well, we haven't gotten around to it yet. And it was around that time that Excelsior had come out already. In its own ebook format. And I was talking with another author, and she said, what else do you have in the pipeline? I said, well, I have this book from Parts Unknown, but it's with iUniverse right now, and they're kind of sitting on it. And she's like, you got to get that book back. You get the book back, and you can go ahead and release it on ebook on your own and set your own price. I said, that sounds like a good idea. So I did that. iUniverse had no problem with giving me the rights back because it wasn't selling. And so I get the rights back, and I look through the book, and I realize like, wow, I don't like this. Like
after you've taken some time away from it.
Well, it's been like 9 years or so since I had written it. I was just like, this isn't working. Like, I don't like the way that this is reading. The characters, they seem too bland. They don't feel two-dimensional. The technology is way outdated by this point. So it's just like, I need to do something here. And so I decided I was going to basically strip the whole thing down and start from scratch. And while putting in all these different elements, I was like, well, the government's got to play a part in this, but if they're going to play a part in it, they got to be antagonistic. They're the ones that are putting up the money. They're subsidizing it, but they have to be the ones using this company, which I later renamed the GCL, the Gladiatorial Combat League. They were going to be, they would be using the GCL as a tool of distraction, so that way they can go about and do their own thing. As they put up different rules that the people vote on, as they bring in new rules, there's something else that happens that cancels out one of their regular freedoms. So one of the things that's mentioned in part 1, called the Blunt Object Amendment, that's where the people have decided that blunt objects are going to be used in the ring. But like by chairs. Doing that well, not even chairs, like lead
Okay.
pipes, like
Okay.
just, but by doing that, by introducing that into the ring, then that cancels out people who are on unemployment insurance.
Okay.
So because the money that's got to help these guys who are getting themselves beaten up by lead pipes in the ring,
Yeah.
they're going to need some extra medical care. Where is it
Yeah.
going to come from? It's going to come from here. So that's basically like what winds up happening. So there is a whole other group that that I've introduced that is basically like trying to fight to get the truth about what's going on behind the scenes about the GCL out there and all these different elements that were happening. Originally, it was just going to be rewriting the book, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to like the page count of where the first book ended, which was like around 230 something pages. I had only gotten about three-fifths through to the story, just barely half of it. And that's when I decided, well, let's break it up a little bit. Let's make it a little bit less like it's a big brick throwing onto people.
Yeah.
And we'll make it a 5-part serial.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, all right, well, we can split it here, and then we can split it here. And then when I finish this part, that'll be part 3. And then I'll have part 4 right here. Then I'll have part 5 right here. It made it so much easier to write and made it so much easier to read.
Yeah.
And it just it's like it came to life. Very much like in the style of the original G.I. Joe miniseries that they started out with. Because they started out as one big story that was done in 5 parts. That's how, season 1 really kind of was all that. And then season 2 was another one. And then season 3, which was like the first full time that they had gone 5 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
they started it out with a 5-part miniseries. And then the rest of it were all just, episodic little 30-minute episodes. But it was fun. It was fun to do that, to kind of go back to that frame of storytelling.
Yeah, I like that idea too. I mean, they're just digestible and also kind of hook you just enough to like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, I can get the next one and I can get the next one.
Right.
I feel like the universe has a plan for you, my friend. I mean, not only are we talking about like summer school and now that launched you over here, but then, you had this 5-part series just kind of sitting there waiting for you to touch it up and make it into something else, and it sat there for 9 years. I still feel like authors
Yeah.
telling you, like, if you think that something
Patience.
isn't happening,
Patience is key. Yeah.
Patience. Oh my god.
And not only that, but you'll get a kick out of this. So I really figured out that that I was going in the right direction in March of 2008 when I got to meet Stan Lee in person.
That's amazing.
So he had just come out. This is the 2008 election. So you have Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama. You have the rise of John McCain before picking Sarah Palin. And so like things were very, things were up. Things were happening, in terms of what was going on, in the world. Stan decided he was going to revisit something that he did back in the 60s called You Don't Say. And that was taking these political images and putting dialogue balloons over them. And so he did that, like around the time of JFK. And when he was about to release that next book, that's when he was assassinated. So they pulled it. So, and he wound up like losing the taste to do it again.
Yeah.
But he got back into it for the 2008 election. And so he came out with this little mini book called Election Days and DAZE. And he was going to be at New York Comic Con that year.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did a little side signing over at Borders on Park Avenue. When I heard that he was going to be there, I got myself a couple of copies and I knew I was going to be there. I was going to be there for this. And and I was so happy to have been there too, because I still remember this. There was somebody who was right in front of me who had like a few extra things for Stan to sign, but we had a limit on things that could be signed. So he asked me, it was just like, because I just had my little Election Days book. He said, "Do you mind if you can you hold this so he can sign it, for me?" I was just like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So that few extra seconds that I had, so that way he's signing my Election Days book, but then he's signing this other thing for this other person. So I had that extra few seconds, and that came to mind. It was just like, what the hell am I going to tell him? I just can't just say thank you. I can't do that. I got to say something else. I have to do it. And so I just said, Stan, I just want to say thank you for not only coming up with all these great characters, but inspiring me to create my own. He looks up at me with the big Stan Lee smile and just goes, "Oh, great, more competition."
That's so so iconic.
And I was just like, which I laughed, of course, because it's Stan, he's saying something funny. And I said to him, one character in particular was really inspired by you. And when he's like, what do you mean? I leaned a little bit closer and just went, his name is Excelsior. And his eyes lit up and he gave this huge smile, just goes, oh, that's great. And shook my hand really vigorously and wished me luck on it. And I'm never going to get a blessing from the Pope. That was good enough.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that is the best story. Is that anywhere in your Excelsior? Like, do you have a little like blurb about it or anything? You should.
I created a TikTok video about it.
That's amazing.
And that was a great moment too. And it was this character has been very good to me. I do have to say, because one of the things that was in the book, you were mentioning, like, asking me if that was in my book, but something else was in the book that has gone on to become something for me, like a little extra piece of the legend.
Yeah.
So my senior year in high school, my teacher was Mrs. Witten, and she was amazing. And she said that she wanted everyone to keep a journal. So every week we would go over she would go over whatever we put in our journal and over the weekend, and then put in little comments and everything, and just, tell us, maybe kind of answer questions or whatever we had in there. And so one of my first entries was me wondering what I was going to do with these characters. Mm-hmm. Have I reached the end of them? Do I kill them off or anything? Do I move on to something else? I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Just like really kind of, doubting myself, as just figuring out what I was going to do next. And she writes back saying, I want to know more about these. I was like, oh, you do? Okay. And then page after page after page, it was just like,
that's all your journal was now, huh?
one big info dump of all of this information about all these characters, where they came up, who they are, their origin stories, like everything, just right out there on the page.
Word vomit.
It really was. And she was so enthusiastic and so supportive and so encouraging about everything. Just keep it going. This is great. And then I would drop in like parts of the stories themselves. And she was thrilled about that. And just really enthusiastic about what I was doing. And it just so happens that year, since it was my senior year, mm-hmm. if you get an 85 on your final grade, then you're exempt from taking your final exam.
Oh, nice.
So that was the thing. So I get up there to take a look at my grade, and it's an 83. Like, missed, so close.
Oh no.
And she looks at me and just goes, I don't want to give you your final exam, so you got some Excelsior extra credit, and adds 2 points to the final.
That's amazing.
So all of a sudden I have an 85. I'm exempt from taking my final exam. I had been dealing with my mother telling me that I need to stop with those stupid characters for years.
Yeah. and now finally, here's proof.
Here's proof that they paid off for me. And from then on, to her credit, she never said anything like that about those characters to me again.
Yeah.
So that became like, that was, yeah. Those, like I said, those characters, especially Excelsior, he's been very good to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Now, okay, not that voice acting has anything to do with world building, which is what I typically like to focus on, but I have a fascination with voice acting because I cannot do it to save my life. And I watched this documentary once called I Know That Voice.
I Know That Voice.
Yes.
Yep.
And just opened my eyes to how much work goes into voice acting. And I could tell just by that little sample you gave us of Stan Lee that you've got something there. So I want to ask a little bit about, it sounded like you said you took voice lessons. Did you already have a little bit of an innate talent, or is that all from the lessons?
When I was 6 years old and my cousin Matthew was recovering from cancer surgery, my mother and my aunt wanted me to basically copy the cassettes that I had of the Star Wars storybooks. And these were things that that we had back in the day that would tell like very truncated versions of these stories of these different movies, and it was narrated by someone. It was like a book on tape, and then a little chime would come up, or in the case of the Star Wars books,
I remember
a little R2D2 beep, and you would turn the page. They wanted me to go ahead and make copies of those so that way he could listen to them while he was doing his chemo. And I said, I'll do them one better. I went ahead and recorded them myself. So I went ahead and I read them for him, and he loved it. He absolutely loved it. And from then on, I'd always had a fascination about voices, and it was either voiceover work with animation, or it was getting into radio. It was something, just like, doing something with the voice, getting in front of a microphone, getting out there. And it seemed like whenever I was in front of a microphone, that's when things would open up. That's when things would be a lot easier for me to speak, because here I was, being asked a question, or if it was my job or something to do that. That's always been something I wanted to do. And in 2015, I had lost my admin job that I had. It was that weekend afterwards when I was sitting on the couch, depressed, not knowing what to do with myself. And that's when I came across I Know That Voice.
Isn't that a fantastic documentary?
I was so taken by it. And I immediately went on Twitter and I asked, using the hashtag St. Louis, just like, does anyone know of any any studios in St. Louis that do voiceover training? Someone who I truly believe is Christina Smith, who is someone who has become a friend, but she's also like an award-winning voiceover artist as well. She recommended Clayton Studios. And I knew Clayton Studios because I had driven past there on the way to work all the time. And I just never really, thought anything of it. I took a look at it and everything, and I saw that, they do have a lesson. And I called them up. The guy that I spoke with, a gentleman named Steve, he went through the whole rundown of the class for me, saying that it's, half of it working with copy, the other half getting behind the microphone. It's like a constant, like, hands-on thing. And at the end of it, you get to record a demo. That sounds great. How much? And then they gave me the price. I was like, oh, damn. Because I just lost my job. I just lost my job. I got a severance. I had a severance and everything, and I was able to use that to help, to keep the bills going while I was still job hunting.
Right.
But at the same time, it was just like, nothing's come up of this yet. Nothing's happened yet. So I'm not in a position to do that. So that's when I went to Kickstarter. I put together a campaign, and I said, and I reached out to, since I am in the writing community, so I reached out to all my writer friends and other friends on social media. And I said, I will narrate 10 words for you. I'll narrate 500 words for you for $10. I will narrate 1,000 words for you for $20. And you can take that little MP3 and you can do whatever you like with it. And I set it up as a Kickstarter campaign. And I said that this is what I'm doing it for. I gave my deadline, and the day before my deadline, I hit my goal.
That's amazing.
So but at the same time, I was also interviewing for this potential job, and it was looking like I was going to get it. So I called up Clayton Studios and I said, okay, I got the money, like, what happens now? Because I understand that the next semester is coming up. And he goes, well, here's the thing. We do this, when we do this, we have to have a minimum of 3 students to really make it worthwhile to our teacher. And right now you're the only one who's made any sort of inquiries about it. So I was like, well, I'm probably going to get this job. And if I do get this job, that's going to wipe out so much of my time. If we're going to do this, it's got to happen. Whatever we can do, to that I can move forward on this would be fantastic. Steve goes like, give me a couple of days. Let me call you back. He reached out to the teacher of the class, a gentleman named Jim Singer, veteran in commercial voiceover. He said, Jim's willing to teach you one-on-one, because he told them my story.
Yeah.
Because I raised the money for it and everything, and because of my timing, he said he was willing to teach me one-on-one.
That's so crazy. I mean, one-on-one time, one-on-one teaching. Wow.
And the great thing is, I recorded my demo, got it all done really quickly, and the very next day, I started that job.
Oh, so you ended up taking that other job too?
I wound up getting it, yeah. And the great thing was about that was that Jim made a point to tell me that I had a real future in e-learning. So all the e-learning, internal presentations, things like that. That's where my voice would really take flight. So he said, like, that's really, where and there's good money to be made in that and everything. So it just so happens that the job where I was, they needed a whole bunch of new presentations to be made. I got to listen to a couple of the presentations that were done before, and they sounded awful.
Yeah.
Because there was no life in the narrating. So they kept on reaching out to me, and then they would send me like a gift card and everything as a thank you. So, like, I'm sure they got like thousands of dollars worth of my time.
Yeah.
But, and just like paid me in a couple of gift cards every now and then. But it was still great practice for me.
Right.
And the learning and development department reached out to me and asked me to contribute to some of theirs. And those presentations were going to be played around the country for that company. It was interesting. It was an interesting time.
I am so inspired by this journey that I'm hearing that you've gone on, it just seems like you were meant to do all these things that you're meant to do. You just had to wait for the universe to catch up to you. So you said you have done some audio stuff for your own book. You have a full cast and sound effects and musical score and everything. This is for the Excelsior series, correct?
This is for the audio drama. So in 2021, I joined the Clubhouse app. This is during the time when you have to get an invite for it. And another author, wonderful person, KM Robinson, she sent me an invite. I got into it. I got hooked really quickly. Great thing is about the Clubhouse app, it's audio based. You get to have, some really wonderful networking conversations, like actual conversations with people all around the world. And it's fascinating and it's inspiring and it's motivating. And this particular group that I joined up with, called the 529 Club, they're just filled with all these amazing creatives. I was so taken by them that I always wanted to, whenever they were having a room, made sure I was going to be in there. And in January of 2022, they were kind of basking in the success a little bit of an audio drama that they had just completed called The Witch's Tomb. They said they want to do more. So they were reaching out to other storytellers that had an idea for an audio drama and to see like where it would go. And so I raised my hand right away and I was just like, I have Excelsior. I sent them the synopsis. They read it and they was like, this would be fun. Give it a shot. One catch. It's got to be 60 minutes long.
So is it the whole first book is
the whole first
just
book,
60 minutes long? Oh my goodness.
The whole first book. Yeah. So basically, the audiobook takes 7 hours to listen to. I had to take 7 hours worth of story and bring it down into 1 hour.
Yes.
And it had to have a beginning, middle, and end, and it had to have the flow that it needed.
Right.
Or else it was going to be like the first Percy Jackson movie. So it was just going to be like bam, 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 bam. It's like, slow down. So I knew I needed to make some changes. I defy anyone to, I give a challenge. I'll say that.
Okay.
I issue a challenge to my fellow authors to adapt one of your own books into a different format, because you will learn so much about what needs to be done with that.
Important to the story, probably.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Because everyone kept on saying how with when the Harry Potter books came out, J.K. Rowling shouldn't change a thing. I'm so glad she did. I'm so glad, that she wasn't the one adapting those books. I'm so glad that Steve Kloves was there to know exactly what to do, what to take out. That Goblet of Fire would have been horrendous, like as it was, like if it came out as it was in the book.
Yeah.
Like it would have gone on for like an hour and a half before they even got to Hogwarts. So they need, it's so necessary to, look at it and realize what needs to be done to cater to specific formats.
Yeah.
So when you're doing an audio drama, you can't do anything with like real big splendor in terms of visuals. No one's going to see anything.
Now, is there like narration involved, or is it just dialogue only?
I was thinking about that, but then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this the right way. I'm going to do this, in real audio drama fashion. I'm not going to have any narration.
Okay.
And so
just dialogue.
It's all dialogue. It's dialogue. It's sound effects. And my team of sound effects artists are just amazing and had a great musical score that Izzy G and Audra Angelique did. The acting in it is superb. Like everything, just like it came together in a way that I never would have thought possible. Thankfully, about a month or so into the rehearsals, that was when the producer, Deborah, gave the green light to make it into 2 episodes. So it wasn't just going to be 1 hour. It was going to be 2 1-hour episodes. So we were going to do for the full story. I got a little bit of leeway and I used it because I was able to kind of like add in some extra scenes and everything, because there were, these performers were doing so well that I was just like, I really want to reward them. I want to give them some more stuff to do. And so, there's this whole other scene that's not in the book at all, but it provides a little extra info about how one character feels about this other character. And then what was great was the actor playing Emperor Nocturnar, who is the main antagonist in it. He wasn't able to be there for part 1 because he had a gig, but at the same time, he only has one scene in part 1 originally. So I took that moment, I took that period of time, and I tweaked the scene so that way it's just one of the generals, General Hadera, who is like a major character in it, a Krunation soldier, and they're saying that Nocturnar is resting. So Nocturnar doesn't show up until part 2. So it's very much in the fashion of Kill Bill.
Oh, I
you know
love
how
it.
like
Yeah.
you know how like you
don't get to
hear,
see Bill.
You hear Bill a little bit
Mhm.
in volume 1, but then in volume 2, there's that wonderful moment where he just turns, it's David Carradine, that weathered face and all, just like looking at the camera and everything, just smiling. And that's what I wound up getting. I had a moment like that.
That's
It was just so much fun. And then to go back and make that, make a couple of edits so that way it all flows in one continuous story.
Yeah.
And then getting the chance to put it up myself on my new podcast. It's all just like, it's wild.
So now this is already out. The Excelsior.
It's out. It is out.
Okay.
Yes, and you can. Yeah. People who are listening right now can go to Audio Drama Sunday Theater. And they can actually go to onceUponAPodcastNetwork.com. Audio Drama Sunday Theater will be there.
And I'll make sure to include the links when this video gets posted, because this sounds amazing. Now, can I ask, are you going to be, or did you already do the sci-fi wrestling series, the From Parts Unknown? Is that going to be in audio too?
It's going to be something. I've been debating
there's
over.
a lot of characters. I think you could really play up with voice acting in there.
Yeah, I've been thinking about actually like doing it in the style of an audiobook, but to do it in podcast form.
Yeah.
So it would be a couple of chapters. It would be a couple of chapters for each episode.
And
it would just be me reading it.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I would really look forward to something like that. All of this.
Yeah.
Do you do this full time now? Are you still working?
No,
or
I am still working. I'm working a great job. I'm very proud of the work that I do full time. It's I'm simply just it's insurance, and I'm a customer service representative for this agent's office here in St. Louis. But I'm really enjoying myself there, and I'm working with great people. They are so wonderfully supportive of everything that I'm doing.
That's
because
great.
they knew of my of my marketing tools, of my social media experience, and they're letting me do that for them.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to do that, have a lot of fun doing it. So it's been a blast. I've really enjoyed working there. I feel like I'm really part of a team there. I am just very very appreciative of all of what everyone does, of everyone there for me.
I can't imagine, how do you find the time to do a full-time job plus all the things that you said you've done? That's so much.
A lot of it's scheduling, because as we're speaking right now, this is the weekend that I have to do all of my month's worth of interviews for the podcast.
Wow.
So they're done, with the exception of one. There's still like one that I need to work on, but all of them are done. All the interviews are done. So now I can edit on my own time.
Okay.
And thankfully my daughter goes to sleep early, and so I have like a couple hours,
the late night,
few hours and everything for late night stuff for myself, and then I can just go ahead and do that and do what I need to do.
Are you with everything that you're doing? You're working full time. You've got, it sounds like, several podcasts that going on, or voice acting things. And are you still writing also? Do you have anything you're working on right now?
I have the 3-book deal with Ronan Weatherford, and they've made it clear that that once book 3 is delivered, then they'll be able to get book 1 on the schedule and get it out there, which I am all for, because I want to make sure that I deliver a finished trilogy for them, because a part 1 and 2 with this to be concluded in message at the end doesn't really do much for anyone.
Right.
So I want to do right by them. I am planning on doing that. So this is the fun part. I'm not sure if you are aware of the National Podcast Post-Month Challenge.
I am not.
Have you heard about that? Okay. So this is something that I believe Jennifer Navarrete started up. It's similar to NaNoWriMo with National Novel Writing Month, except with this challenge, you are recording and posting a 10-minute or longer episode of a podcast every day in November.
Wow. In November.
Yeah.
Okay.
In November. Yep. National Podcast Post-Month Challenge. So I did that in 2018 when I was just starting up Excelsior Journeys. And it was just like an offshoot of my show. And it was very much a one-person stream of consciousness kind of thing. And it really wasn't, I'm not really proud of it. I had to I had to record 11 episodes on November 30th just to make sure I was all caught up on it, everything. So it was kind of a mess. So for the next one that I did, I wanted to do it right. So I said that I want to have a different subject. I want to have a whole different show. So I said that I wanted to take a look at all of the Marvel movies that were not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, give my credit to them because they were the ones that really started all this. And I remember telling one of my best friends, Jason Goodman, about it. And I said that I want to go from 1986's Howard the Duck to 2019's Dark Phoenix. And originally, it was just going to be called Outside the Marvel Studios. And then when I said that, I was like, I'm going to go from Howard the Duck to Dark Phoenix. I'm going to go from Duck till Dark. And he goes, that's your title.
That is a good title.
And so it became this one right here, From Duck Till Dark, Outside the Marvel Studios. I reached out to another artist, Rachel Bostwick, who had done the cover art From Parts Unknown for the latest version of it. I told her what I had in mind, and I said I wanted two silhouettes, like one, right up against each other, one of Howard the Duck and one of Jean Grey as Dark Phoenix. And she delivered this, and I was just like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely perfect. Like, that's exactly what I wanted. And so I ran with it because I am a sucker for behind-the-scenes stories for movies.
Yeah,
and it
me
turns
too.
out that quite a few of these have their own behind-the-scenes sagas, especially 2002 Spider-Man.
Dang.
That, and I didn't realize how tied they were to James Bond, specifically the 2006 Casino Royale movie, because there's a lot of different shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes that wound up being settled in court. So that became something that I really had a lot of fun talking about, and so that became like my main episode on that. I spent like about a half hour or so talking about that Spider-Man movie. All the rest of the episodes are like about 10 minutes, some a little bit less, some a little bit more, but I was overall proud of it and I was happy with it, and it's still out there today. So
I'm gonna have to look for this because that sounds like a really fascinating listen. Like I said, I love behind the scenes stuff too. I'm the only one in my family that watches the making of whatever it was that we were watching.
Those,
I have to.
I watch those more than I watch the actual movie.
Yeah.
Like I may have watched, I've watched Clerks like a number of times, but I've watched the Snowball Effect documentary on the Clerks X disc.
Yeah.
Like at least 10 times more because I love those. I love those kinds of stories. So I decided this time around, because I have nothing else going on, that I wanted to basically do the National Podcast Post Month Challenge this November and mix it with NaNoWriMo.
Okay.
By writing my draft of Greater Glory while doing the Podcast Post Month Challenge.
Okay.
And so it would be a means of keeping myself accountable and also giving the spotlight to other authors. So I reached out and I said, who would like to do a 10-minute interview about your own NaNoWriMo work in progress? And I've already gotten some people that have started signing up. So
that's great.
So that's
you're
going to be
preparing in advance. That's coming up in November. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Because I already got almost all of my interviews done for September. I just have to do the ones for October, which I'm going to be doing in a few weeks. Again, that's just one weekend's worth.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the plan. So
that's really cool. And you're right. And that's a great idea. I mean, to kind of help promote like what other authors are doing and just to talk about the process, which is why I do what I do, because I want to help other authors like just get real world experience from other authors. So this is great. Oh my gosh. I'm looking forward to that. I took a note. I'm going to make sure. And that's going to be, people can find that on your website and on the Once Upon a Podcast.
This one's actually, it's not yet part of the network because we've just now decided that we're going to be opening up the doors to pop culture, nostalgia based shows.
Okay.
Because originally it was all like more original material that was all about, as we say, like inspiring, motivating, celebrating, educating, and even rejuvenating creatives of all kinds. That's our part of our mission statement.
Love it. Good. Yeah, good words. Like those are very evocative words that you just used. So can you talk a little bit about, I mean, gosh, you write, you podcast and voice act and all this. Let's stick to the writing part to help authors. Are there any specific tools and resources that you use when you're either like researching or kind of trying to work on world building or problem solving for whatever you're writing?
One of the things that I really do is I just talk about it.
Okay.
Because you never know who is going going to wind up giving you the sort of solution that you need. I'm very much someone who really believes in verisimilitude. Like, I can buy the premise that you're selling me. You got to make sure that those other little things, you got to make sure you do your homework on where you're going for specific things. My last 2 years when I lived in New York, I was working at the Top of the Rock observation deck at Rockefeller Center in New York City. Last 2 years, I get the best view of New York City ever, and I get paid for it. You're like, wow. Yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
And so I really just kind of fell in love with that place, with the people, with the whole setup and everything. Like, I was someone who was always taking the guests up to the 70th floor so they can get that 360 view. And really, very early on when I was there, I just remember like walking around that 70th floor, which is really one big platform. It's well secure, but at the same time, it's just like there's no glass in front of you. It's wide open spaces. So if you're gonna get a picture of New York City, if you're gonna get a picture of the Empire State Building, you go there.
Yeah.
And so that's what I always say. But while I'm walking around there, I was just like, damn, it'd be really cool to have a good sword fight scene up here. That's what I was thinking. Oh, that'd be great. That'd be so cool to have, like, I mean, just be like just so much back and forth and everything, and just be like just an amazing look for it and everything. It'd be so much fun. And then all of a sudden it hit me. How the hell are they going to get past security with their swords?
Yeah.
We're in a post 9/11 world here. So it's just like, they can't just like, what are you supposed to do? Just like, run it through and just like, what's with the sword? It's like,
yeah.
Oh, it's decoration. Like, okay, you can go. No.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Something's gotta happen. And I talked about this with one of my coworkers, and just saying how, like, I am stuck about this. Like, I have no idea how the hell he's going to get up with a sword.
Yeah.
I got one thing with one character. He's going to do his own thing. How is Matthew supposed to get up to the 70th floor with that sword? And then she goes, there could be an event up there. Oh, because now all of a sudden that opened the door for me to basically say that one of my other characters, Jason, who stays behind on Earth, is given permission by Matthew to continue on with the stories. He's able to get it set up as a series on NBC. And so where are they going to be, where they're going to be to celebrate this and make it like this big grand statement about this upcoming series? At Rockefeller Center. It's there, that's where they are. So send them up on the A elevator, because if they go the A elevator, then they're bypassing security, and there is no security to get in the way of him bringing his sword up. So as soon as she said that opened up, like, it was just like, oh, and because of this and this and this, and it opened up like every bit of the Top of the Rock segments in that second book. It became like it's now a centerpiece of that whole story. It was just like, it's all right there because she said there could be an event up there.
Yeah,
that's what opened up. That's what opened everything up. So
that's fantastic. I get what you're saying. I talk a lot of my ideas with my husband, and what I end up getting is he comes up with all the ways to break the thing that I've come up with, and then I have to problem solve for it myself. But at least he's given the other side of like, you can't do that because of this, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Right. So it is very helpful to get that kind of outside in perspective. Yeah, that's great. Any other tools or reference materials or anything, methods that you might suggest?
Really just patience. It's patience, with your story. Don't rush it, and don't be afraid to write crap. Because you need something to rewrite when all is said and done. You need to have, I think it's become more beneficial to me to have more than one person to bounce ideas off of, to work with, in terms of, like, I love the fact that I have a story editor, and I also have, for the first 2 books, I had a content editor. Now I'm very likely going to have a content editor at the new publisher. And hopefully, hopefully there won't be as much to change for books 1 and 2 as there were for when I was set up at my previous publisher. Because one editor was saying that for the second book, Excelsior needs to go on a walkabout. He needs to rediscover his home planet. He needs to reconnect with it, and you need to open that up. You got to show your readers what it is that that this is now, this whole new canvas that you're going to be working with. And so I did that, and then I send it over to my content editor, and she's like, all this reads like a travelogue, get rid of it. So
So you've just got competing
yeah, but it was like,
Feedback.
I understand what it was that, for this, but I also understand that it was a slog to get through for that particular draft. Then that forced me to go into problem solving mode. And that's when I was just like, well, Excelsior is a god in human form. That's what he is. That's what he started out with. That's what he is now. It's what he always will be. So why not play that up a little bit? Why not have that element of him separate his consciousness, separate from Matthew, and then travel all around the world and everything, soak in everything, and then just bam, reconnect with Matthew, and boom, he's got everything.
Yeah.
And all of that took like a page and a half.
That's
and
perfect.
I was able to do exactly what I needed to do to show the planet, show enough of the planet. It was almost like the News on the March reel at the beginning of Citizen Kane.
Okay.
How you're giving like this broad view of Charles Foster Kane, and then the rest of the movie is all the specifics that fill in those blanks. And so that's what I got to do. I got to just like, and then right back into Matthew.
Yeah.
And it was like that I know Kung Fu moment from The Matrix. Just like, whoa.
That's perfect. That's a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. See, I always do this with every interview. I'm like, guys, that's a good tip right there. I'm going to point that out. Any other, you already kind of started with like any other advice, but that's usually where I end up on. Any other advice that we haven't given yet? Not that I'm forcing you to dig. If that's what you got, then I
Basically, what I would say is use the tools that you have to get your work out there. Right now, we are at a place right now in our modern technology where we have a full-on movie studio in our pocket.
Yeah.
We have the means to shoot, edit, and post whatever we want. The key is to stay within your resources and get those stories out there, because everyone says how like, oh, every story's been done, like there's no originality anymore or anything like that. That's not the case. That is not the case, because the world still does not have your stories.
Right.
You got to get those out, because you never know who's going to need them the most.
Yeah. No, that's great. I definitely agree. I've heard that a lot of times, and I remember that when I first began writing was, what can I possibly write that's any different than what anybody else has written? But it's almost like once you find your voice, your writer voice, at least I hope for others. For me, I felt like once I found my writer voice, I realized like, oh, even if I'm telling, I don't know, the Cinderella story, which has been told over and over again, I have a different way of saying it than this person did, than this person. And it feels like a different story as long as you you write true to your voice. I think that's a great piece of advice, because the other thing I think that holds people up is well, I don't know how to use this yet, or I don't know how to format my book, I don't know how to I don't know proper grammar, whatever the reason is. Like, I feel like just get it down. That's what NaNoWriMo's all about, right? It's just get it all down, and you can deal with all the other stuff
but the
later.
one thing regarding NaNoWriMo, and this is the one thing that too many people really overlook, is that when November 30th happens, that does not mean you click publish on December 1st.
Yes.
What you have is a 50,000 word draft,
rough draft
of a book.
Or
I actually
brainstorm
did. I did a panel a few years back over at Archon, over in Collinsville, Illinois, and it was myself and a couple other authors talking about NaNoWriMo. And what I brought with me was a picture of my house as it was being built from back in 2013. All it was at that time was the foundation. It was the basement.
Yes.
And it was like those everything just kind of like molding it in place. I was like, that's what you have when you're finished on November 30th. Stop thinking about what color your drapes are going to be.
Yes, yeah.
Because this is all you have right now.
Yeah, it's too soon to think about drapes.
Right. So
okay.
When I showed them that, it was just like, oh, okay. It was like they got it. It's just
that
like they
makes
just
sense.
needed that visual spark.
Yes.
To see like,
and this is a good point to why your writer's voice is important, and you tell the story, because you could hear a rule or a piece of advice over and over and over again, but it takes one person to say it in such a way that it finally clicks. It's so eye-opening. Okay, one final tiny question, because you made a statement, and I'm not going to remember the exact words verbatim, but do you listen to the Writing Excuses podcast when Brandon Sanderson was on? Do you like Brandon Sanderson?
I do.
Okay.
I and like I'm not an avid reader of his and everything, but I I love I love the way that he has gone about with getting his work out there and everything. And,
Right.
He's definitely someone who deserves the respect that that he's earned. But at the same time, I don't believe I've heard that episode.
Okay,
yet.
so there is a podcast. It's called Writing Excuses. They're each supposed to be about 15 minutes long, and it started out as Brandon Sanderson, and there was like 2-3 other authors, and they would just discuss for 15 minutes about writing, and then on to the next podcast. Eventually, Brandon got so big that now he's no longer on the podcast, but there's still a rotating cast member. But while he was on, he had this kind of saying that was like, write the bad scene, because if you just sit there and you're just like thinking and you can't figure it out, then you're never really going to get anywhere. But if you just write the bad scene, then at least you can you have something to analyze and go, why is this bad and how do I fix it? And you said something very similar to that, and I can't remember exactly the words you said. I'll have to like rewind back and
just don't be afraid to write crap. Yeah.
Yes, because I was like, that is so true, and something that, again, I had to hear over and over and over again, and it wasn't until I actually did it, like Brandon Sanderson said it, and I went, okay, Brandon, I'll give it a try. And I wrote the bad scene and went, oh yeah, that does make sense, because now I can actually see and I'm a visual person, so now I could see what needs to be fixed. It's just
so you'll appreciate this. So there's another great documentary that's out there called King Cohen, and it's all about the late great writer director Larry Cohen.
Okay.
And he was one of the most prolific writers in all of Hollywood. He was also someone who was like an idea man. So he would create different shows and get them started and then move on to something else. Yeah. He created the show Branded with Chuck Connors, and he did that like while he was sitting in the waiting room watching a movie that was on, while he was about to go in and pitch a different story. I was just watching The Four Feathers and showing someone who was branded as a coward. So we'll have someone who was from the Civil War that was branded as a coward, and and following him, who was accused of being a coward during the war, and that got that going. So one of the things that he always did when it came to his writing, because he had sticky notes all over the place, and he showed this in his office, like just all these different little post-it notes like littering his place. But what he would do for when he would actually sit down and write, the reason why he was able to write so quickly is because he would start with the scene that made him want to write that story, and then he would figure out what happened that led up to it, and then what happens after that scene. And so he would start there. It was usually like about the middle, and then he would go like, where did this character come from before, and then just set it all up there, see what happens, what the fallout was from that scene. You can even see that like in some of his writing, just like, oh, that was the moment, like that's where I saw it, so
I'll have to find this documentary.
It's really good.
King Cohen. Okay.
King Cohen, yeah. He's someone that, like when I found that he had passed away only like recently, just a couple of years ago, I was upset. I was just like, damn, it would have been great to interview him.
Just to get behind the mind.
Yeah, because like there are certain people that I'm so proud to have had the time to interview, because I decided that, like at some point, it was really when I met Flint Dilley, who was the story consultant for Transformers the movie. I took a shot in the dark, friend requested him on Facebook. Apparently we had a couple of mutual friends because he accepted. And, we would, chat once or twice, just like a little bit at a time. But when I finally got my 27x40 poster of Transformers the movie, got it framed, put it up in my office. It's now like the centerpiece of my office. It's my Lebowski rug. It ties the room together. I took a picture of that, and I took a picture of the 3 quotes that start up the first Excelsior book. One of them is from the Book of Matthew, one of them is from Lamort to Arthur, and one is from Transformers the movie. And it just sets that tone. It sets the kind of tone that I want with it.
Yeah.
He wrote back and even offered like a little tidbit about that particular scene, about that quote that I didn't know about. I didn't know that it was his take on Winston Churchill. When he said, "One day an Autobot shall rise from our ranks and use the power of the Matrix to light our darkest hour." And it was like something you just don't forget.
Yeah.
And when he did that, I reached out to him and I said, "I see you have your book out now, The Games Master," which is his whole life writing in 80s animation. Why don't you come on my show? We can talk about it. And he did. And we talked for about 2 hours. And we could have kept going. It was right after that's when I noticed that, like, oh, next year is the 35th anniversary of the movie. So why don't you come back on, and I'll see if I can get more people to come on, and we'll just kind of use August. Yeah. And that will be our time to talk about it. And he was like, I'm in. Part 1, I was able to not only get him, but I got the original screenwriter, Ron Friedman, who I now consider a friend.
Yeah.
Like, because of this. I had a panel of 5 different voice actors from the movie, including the narrator, Victor Caroli, who had never taken part in any panel with any other Transformers voice actors until my show.
Wow.
He was going to do one in 2020 in Florida, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
So they had to cancel that convention. That opened the door for me. And then I had the music composer, Vince DiCola, who did not only the music to that, but also did the music to Rocky IV. I had him on twice on my show.
How cool.
And I had a couple of designers from Hasbro to come on. It was just, and I had FJ DeSanto, the producer of the new Transformers shows that are on Netflix now.
Mm-hmm.
So all that happened just because I reached out to a person. That's another big thing for the podcasters that are out there that are looking to like kind of get started on their own journey. Don't be afraid to reach out to these people. They are very accessible, but make sure that you're reaching out to them in the right way. Don't do it in public. Don't do it in a tweet. Do it, do it by looking up their website first, because more often than not, they're going to have a contact button on there. They're going to have their email address. Use that to reach out to them because they want you to contact them that way, or they wouldn't have that there. If you know them from Facebook, then mention that. If you have no other means of contacting them, then reach out through Facebook. Do it, and don't be afraid to do it.
Right. I mean, what's the worst they can say is no.
Right.
You know?
And I've gotten my share of no's. I've gotten my share of no's. I've gotten people that that either wouldn't respond at all, or would go ahead and say, "Sorry, I can't. I have this going on and everything. But thank you for asking." That's the worst that can happen.
Yeah.
So why not?
Why not? Oh my gosh. Folks, this was a little bit of a longer episode, but there was so much. I could keep asking you questions. There's stuff that I wrote down. Oh, we could ask that, but I really just want to make sure we stay in show format. But
hey, there's always a part two.
There's always a part two. I might have you back on because there's so much to dig into, and you do so much. Since we're kind of at the end point of the show, is there anything that you want to plug or mention that maybe I missed?
Anyone can find me by going to, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, you can find me there. You can reach out to me through my website, which is he'sgotit.com.
Which, by the way, I'm going to stop you right there. If you go to this website, it took me a minute. When I saw the website, I was like, I don't get it. And then I went to the website and I was like, oh, that's great. By George, he's got it.
Yep. And that was simply just a shot in the dark idea, because my wife and I were talking about like what am I going to call my business? And just like, I want, something simple, just something like, I don't know, like by George, he's got it. Yeah. And she goes like, that's it.
It's so good.
It's like, don't. And it was very much in the same fashion as when she was spilling out, possible names for our daughter.
Yeah.
And just said like, what about Scarlet? And I immediately my light bulb immediately went up because I'm thinking Scarlet from G.I. Joe. And I was just like, yes, that is it. And then she's like, well, what about Charlotte? I was like, no, you said Scarlet. That's it. So.
That's great. I'm sorry. So I cut you off. So people can find you on Instagram, Facebook, your website.
Yep. You can go to my website, and you can look up all the different shows from the Once Upon a Podcast Network by just going to onceuponapodcastnetwork.com. You'll find them all, including the new show, Audio Drama Sunday Theater, which I am so proud of. It's a bi-weekly show. Each month is going to be introducing a new audio drama. It'll be either the complete audio drama or an excerpt from it. And then since it's a bi-weekly show, it's going to be one episode is going to be the actual show, and then 2 weeks later it'll be an interview with the person who has put that show together.
Yeah.
So
fantastic. Yes, I've looked through the site. I mean, there's so much on there, folks. This is just a wealth of stuff. Like, great interview. So much that you have your hands in that people can check out and learn from. I love everything that you're doing. I love the concept of Excelsior. I'm very intrigued by From Parts Unknown. I can't wait to dig into that.
I can't wait to dig into it because like there's a lot that I want to do with it, and I feel like currently it's just available as the one complete volume of all 5 books in one, but I feel like I'm not doing it justice that way. I want to really kind of scale it out a little bit more and see what else I can do with it. I'm still debating over whether I want to
like what format?
Get it set up with a different publisher if I want to keep the rights and make the changes myself, whatever it is I want to do. But I definitely want to do something with it.
Gosh, I feel like I can see it as like a graphic novel, and then also
Mm-hmm.
the audio. Okay, guys, I know I said we were going to end this, but I just have to, one more thing. Have you listened to, there's an audiobook. It's called Dungeon Crawler Carl. Have you heard of it or listened to it?
No, I
Okay.
have not.
It
but
might not be up your alley. I don't know if you have any
Yeah.
tabletop role-playing experience. That's kind of the other side of my life is tabletop
Fun,
role-playing.
fun,
But
yeah.
Dungeon Crawler Carl is an audiobook series. I think there's like 5 books out right now. It is run, it has a bunch of, it has a full cast, same thing, sound effects, there's a musical score. It is, I've never heard an audiobook like this, where there's a voice for every character, and like I said, you know, the sound effects and stuff. When I was looking into your bio and kind of researching before we did this interview, I thought, gosh, I wonder if that's what it's going to be like. It is a fascinating thing to listen to, and I think that when we started talking about your From Parts Unknown, that's how I see this playing out, is in this kind of audiobook format with just a bunch of voice actors, and because there's so many things you can choose from. If you're going with the wrestling world, like so many different things you can do. I can't wait to see where that goes. That sounds so interesting. All of it does.
Yeah.
There's a lot you could do with this.
There is quite a bit, and I'm really excited for it. And I just know that like something's gonna happen with this. Something has to. So.
I can't wait to see what happens.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, folks. Okay, I am wrapping it up. I appreciate having you on the show. Thank you for telling us about all that you're doing. It sounds like there's so much. I like I said, I think the universe has big things for you. It just seems like that's your history, and I can't wait to see, like, someday you're gonna be like a household name, and I'm gonna go, I had that guy on my podcast. So
that won't be so bad.
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing that happen for you. Folks, go check out George on all his websites and podcasts and books and audiobooks. I sure am. Check all that stuff out. I have done my research. So thank you
so
for
much.
being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Check out onceuponapodcastnetwork.com to experience George's most recent project, Audio Drama Sunday Theater, presenting and celebrating original audio dramas. For updates on the release of his Excelsior journeys and other work, go to www.he'sgotit.com. Make sure you like and subscribe for more interviews like this, and thanks for getting Perty Nerdy with us.